And in today's education news, 1 in 3 parents believe the pandemic showed children do not need to go to school every day, a poll finds. So since the COVID pandemic, there has been a seismic shift in attitudes to full-time school attendance, according to a study by Public First. While the factors behind the absences vary between cost of living crisis and a rise in mental health problems among young people, the study does not link them to parents working from home. However, I have said previously that I think one of the reasons that we're really struggling to recruit teachers into the profession is because most other jobs have been able to adapt to that hybrid way of working. And I don't know whether that has, for some parents, made them think that can work for students as well. Now, this news does come after this article saying the first UK-wide hybrid school will be opening in 2024. This school is expecting students to come in for at least 1 day a week for practical subjects and then take part in sport and social activities, but for the rest of the week they'll be offering 4 live lessons, 2 independent study session a day. Now, as a primary school teacher who taught during the pandemic, doing some live lessons, for me as a teacher, I'm not up for this. I'd much rather have the children in class with me. But you know, who am I to say it's not going to work? Well, back to the original article, it says there's fundamental work that needs to be done in rebuilding the contract between families and schools. The poll, which questioned just over 1,000 parents, which, you know, I suppose you can take that with a pinch of salt, that's not too many people. It showed that there remains a significant minority for whom the bonds of trust between families and schools are broken. Now, there is no doubt that since the pandemic, there has been a massive impact on absence. Ofsted reported that nearly a quarter of pupils were persistently absent, missing at least 10% of their school sessions. But I suppose my question is, what's causing this? What is making parents feel that school is no longer worth valuing? It's not necessary? Because for me as a parent, I think it is really important. I don't want to play the blame game here. I don't want to go down the route of blaming anyone necessarily, because I think it's a culmination of reasons. One thing I won't have people blaming teachers individually. I think teachers are working their hardest in a real tough set of circumstances. They see day in, day out that the system itself is set up to fail both teachers and students in a lot of ways, and teachers just trying their best in such a broken system. I will say there's an argument to put some of the blame at the government's door. If you're going to have a government who show a complete and utter lack of caring towards the education system and those who work in it, constantly underfunding, undervaluing, then it's going to have a knock-on effect where people think, well, if the government don't care, why should we? I do think that, you know, during the pandemic, when the government were voting against feeding the most vulnerable children in our society, it was schools who then stepped up and filled that gap. And there were so many schools providing meals and delivering food to houses and just really set that bar high as far as expectations. And they stepped up to so many challenges during the pandemic. And I think that expectation is still there now. There are still expectations for schools to do so much more than simply educate students. And that's so hard to do when you've got the restrictions as far as budget and time. I think schools are finding that really tricky and difficult because the societal change is happening where so much of what's going on outside of school is then being brought into and having to be dealt with in school. You know, take for example, how many of our students who are not old enough are actually on social media using different apps, and issues that then arise are having to be dealt with by teachers and schools. So clearly there's lots of reasons. I'd love to know what you think is the main reason for this. And I get attendance is a huge issue in so many schools. I know schools are heavily judged by their attendance, but I also recognise there's only so much a school can do within their powers to actually improve that.